You ever go silent with someone and wonder what's actually happening in their head? I'm talking about that person you've been dating. Or maybe even your ex, who has what's called an avoidant attachment style. You stop texting, you stop reaching out, you're finally holding your boundary, and the whole time you're sitting there thinking, what are they thinking right now? Do they even care? Are they relieved? Are they panicking? Here's the truth. Most of the time, you don't get a clear answer. They don't tell you what's going on inside. And that silence drives you crazy. It's like playing a game where you never get to see the other player's cards. And if you've been in this dynamic, you already know how exhausting it is. 1 minute, they're pulling you in, breadcrumbing you with little messages just to keep you hooked. And the next minute, poof, they vanish. That's why today I'm going to break it down for you, step by step. I'm going to walk you through the 5 stages an avoidant goes through when you stop reaching out. And I promise you, once you see it laid out like this, you're never going to feel as confused or powerless in this situation again. Now, before we dive in, let me be clear. This is not about blaming avoidance or demonizing them. Avoidant attachement develop because at some point in their life, their emotional needs weren't met. This is the strategy they learned to protect themselves. But understanding their pattern doesn't mean excusing it. And it sure as hell doesn't mean sacrificing your own peace to make them feel comfortable. So here's my goal for you. By the end of this video, you'll not only know what goes on in their mind, you'll also have the clarity to ask yourself a bigger question. Is this dynamic actually serving me? Or is it time to let go? Because knowledge is power. And when you understand what's really happening on the other side of that silence, you stop personalizing it. You stop thinking, I'm too much. I'm not enough. I said the wrong thing. No, this is about their pattern, not your worth. So let's get into it. Here are the 5 stages that happen in an avoidance mind. The moment you stop reaching out, all right, let's start with stage 1. The very first thing that happens in an avoidance mind when you stop reaching out is simple. They assume you're just giving them space. Now, why is that? Because that's the story they've told themselves every single time this dynamic has played out before. Think about it. Maybe you've already tried going silent before. You've tried no contact, or you pulled back, hoping they would step up. But at some point, you broke the silence. You sent that just checking in text, or you responded to one of their breadcrumbs. And in their mind, that's proof. Proof that you'll always circle back. Proof that they don't have to take your silence seriously. So when you stop reaching out, they don't panic at first. In fact, they feel calm. They feel like they're the one in control of this little dance. They're thinking, oh, this is temporary. They just need a little break. I'll wait it out. And eventually, they'll come back. And here's the tricky part. You've probably reinforced this pattern without even realizing it. Let's be real. It's incredibly hard not to break silence when you love someone. Or when you're confused by their behavior. An avoidant knows that even if it's not conscious, they've learned how to breadcrumb you just enough to keep you hooked. A random hey. Thinking of you are a veg. Hope you're doing okay. That tiny crumb of attention, it pulls you right back in. Let me pause here. Because I want you to hear this falling for the breadcrumb doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're human. You crave connection, clarity, and consistency. And if someone dangles even a little bit of that in front of you, of course you're going to grab on. That's not a flaw. That's your nervous system doing what it's wired to do. But here's the problem. Because avoidants know, again, not always consciously, that this works They don't take your silence seriously. They don't feel the urgency to change their behavior or step up in the relationship. Instead, they lean back. They distract themselves. They keep living as if nothing's wrong. Because in their mind, you're always on the hook. This is why so many people feel stuck in relationships with avoidance. You keep thinking, if I pull away, they'll realize what they're losing. And sometimes they do eventually, but in this first stage, they don't. In stage one, they're relaxed. They think they've got time. They think they've got you. And here's where I want to caution you. If you're hoping your silence will be the wake-up call, stage one is the most dangerous moment because this is the point where they're most likely to breadcrumb you and pull you right back into the same old cycle. And you might even feel relieved when they do because it looks like they finally care. They're finally reaching out, but 9 times out of 10, it's not genuine change. It's a reflex. It's a way to reset the pattern. So what do you do here? You stay mindful. You remind yourself stage one is not about them suddenly valuing you. It's about them assuming they still have access to you. And if you break your silence too soon, all you're doing is proving their point. Let me say that again, because it's so important. If you break your silence in stage one, you reinforce the avoidance belief that you'll always be there, no matter what. Now, I know how tempting it is. I know how loud the anxiety can get when you're waiting, wondering and hoping, but I need you to hear me. Your silence is not punishment. Your silence is clarity. It's the only way to disrupt the cycle and stop teaching them that they can have you without ever really showing up for you. So stage one is about patience. It's about recognizing the pattern, and it's about holding your ground long enough for the real shift to begin. Because if you can hold steady past stage one, that's when things start to change in their mind. Now, let's move into stage two. This is where things start to shift in their head. You've held your silence longer than they expected. And suddenly they begin to wonder if they've overplayed their hand. See, up until now, they were comfortable. They thought, no big deal. This happens all the time. They'll be back. But as the days stretch on and you still don't reach out, something changes. For the first time, they feel a flicker of doubt. It sounds like this inside their mind. Wait, did I push too far? Did I misread this? Maybe they're more serious this time than I thought. And that tiny crack in their certainty, it's huge. Because remember, avoidants thrive on control. Control of the pace, control of the closeness, control of the dynamic. But right now, you're not moving. And when you don't move, they lose that sense of control. Here's what usually happens next. They play a mental game of chicken with you. It's like 2 cars racing toward each other. Who's going to swerve first? Every other time, they were confident you'd be the one to swerve. But right now, as your silence continues, they start to feel nervous that maybe, just maybe, this time you're not going to blink. And when that realization creeps in, something even bigger shows up. Anxiety, avoidance are masters at distracting themselves. They work more. They scroll more. They line up social plans to fill the silence. But underneath all of that, they're unsettled. They can't shake the thought that maybe they've pushed too far. I want you to catch this. Stage 2 doesn't usually look like them rushing in with a full apology or a grand gesture. That's not how avoidants operate. Instead, it shows up in subtle shifts, watching your social media more closely, fishing for updates through mutual friends, maybe sending a casual text to test the waters. Something like, hey, just saw this and it reminded me of you. It seems harmless, but it's really their way of checking. Are you still there? Can I still count on you? Now, here's the danger zone for you. This is the moment where you might feel hopeful. You think, finally, they're realizing what they could lose. And I get it, that flicker of attention can feel like progress. But let me be real with you in stage 2. Most of the time, it's not a breakthrough. It's a reflex. It's not accountability. It's panic management. So what do? You hold steady. You remind yourself, stage 2 is not them stepping up. It's them testing if you're still available. If you give in too soon, the game resets. The avoidant relaxes, thinks, okay, still got them. And you're back to square one. The power in stage 2 is realizing that their panic is not your responsibility to soothe. Their anxiety doesn't mean you rush in. It means your silence is starting to work, not as manipulation, but as truth. Because for the first time, they're feeling the consequences of their behavior. And if you can stay steady here, it sets the stage for the next shift. Okay, let's get into stage 3. And this one is big. When your silence holds longer than they thought possible, the fear that creeps in isn't about losing the relationship. It's about something much deeper. The fear of emotional detachment. Here's what I mean. Avoidance can handle a breakup. They can even handle distance. But what terrifies them is the idea that you're no longer emotionally connected to them. That's the real trigger. Because for someone with an avoidant attachment style, emotional disconnection feels like reliving their earliest wound. Let's rewind for a second. Avoidant attachment often forms when a caregiver didn't consistently meet a child's emotional needs. The child learned, when I express what I need, no one shows up. So they shut those needs down. They stopped asking. They told themselves, I'm fine on my own. But underneath that longing for connection never went away. It just got buried. So fast forward to today, when you stop reaching out and that silence continues, guess what gets triggered? That old wound. The thought of you emotionally detaching, of you truly moving on, feels exactly like what they experienced growing up being unseen, unheard, unimportant. It's not just uncomfortable, it's traumatic. And you'll see this fear come out in strange ways. Maybe suddenly they're posting happy, flashy photos online. Maybe they're out with friends every night. Maybe they jump into a rebound. On the surface, it looks like they've moved on. But beneath it, it's pure distraction. It's them saying, if I can prove I'm fine, I don't have to feel the panic of losing that emotional tie. And here's the tricky part. You might see that behavior and think, oh no, they're happy without me. I meant nothing to them. Stop. That's not the truth. What you're seeing is avoidance on hyperdrive. They're not fine. They're fighting tooth and nail to escape the terror of emotional detachment. Now, let me pause and talk directly to you, because I know this is where you start questioning yourself. You think, am I being cruel by holding this silence? Am I just triggering their trauma? And listen, I get it. You care. You don't want to hurt someone you love. But here's the truth. You're not punishing them. You're responding to their lack of effort. You've tried. You've reached out. You've given second, third, fifth chances. And when someone refuses to meet you halfway, detachment isn't cruelty. It's survival. It's what happens naturally when you've carried the relationship alone for too long. So let me say it clearly. You are not responsible for fixing their wound. You didn't create it, and you can't heal it for them. Only they can do that with awareness, accountability, and often therapy. Stage 3 is messy. It's emotional, and it's the turning point because this is when they feel the consequences of silence the most. They can no longer tell themselves, you'll always be there. And that realization shakes them. If you can stay grounded here, if you can hold steady through their noise and distraction, you'll see the shift unfold even more clearly in stage 4. Now let's talk about stage 4. And honestly, this one is fascinating. By this point, your silence has gone on long enough that their old tricks don't work. They've breadcrumbed. They've distracted themselves. They've posted the "I'm fine without you" highlight reel. And yet you're still not reaching out. So what do? They start watching you from a distance. This is where the avoidance, curiosity, and their fear collide. They want to know, are you really gone? Are you moving on? Or are you just waiting? But remember, they're not going to come right out and say that vulnerability still feels like danger to them. So instead, they become observers. How does it look? They check your Instagram stories. They scroll through your posts, looking for clues. They might ask mutual friends subtle questions like, hey, have you heard from them? Or they'll drop a random casual text, something so light it almost feels like coincidence. Hey, saw this show and thought of you. Or hope you're doing well. But let's be honest here, that's not coincidence. That's a probe. It's them dipping a toe in the water to see if the connection is still alive. Now, here's the kicker. What they're really trying to figure out is this. Do I still have access to you without having to fully commit? That's the avoidance sweet spot. Close enough to feel safe, but not close enough to risk rejection or intimacy. So in stage 4, they test, they hover, they observe, but they rarely go all in. And this is where you might feel the strongest pull to re-engage. Because when you see that message pop up, or you notice they've been watching your stories, your heart jumps. You think they're paying attention. They still care. And yes, they do care, but not necessarily in the way you want them to. In stage 4, it's less about love and more about reassurance. They're trying to soothe their own fear of detachment, not necessarily rebuild a healthy relationship. So here's my caution to you. Don't confuse monitoring with commitment. Watching from a distance is not the same thing as showing up. A breadcrumb is not a meal. A casual check-in is not accountability. And this is why stage 4 can feel so confusing. You see just enough attention to believe change is possible. But if you re-engage here without real action from their side, you risk getting pulled back into the cycle. Let me remind you, your job isn't to make it easier for them to test the waters. Your job is to notice the difference between someone who's observing you and someone who's actually choosing you. Stage 4 is proof that your silence is working. They're unsettled. They're curious. They don't want to lose you entirely. But until they stop watching from